It's funny. This past offseason, there was jokes being made about the Broncos. Like, what are they doing? They move on from Russell Wilson and his contract. They're still paying him right now. He's a Steeler now, making minimum wage in terms of NFL salary. But man, they are still paying him big bucks. And in doing so, they've had to change their team. They've had to change that quarterback room. Coming into this draft, everybody knew it wasn't a secret. They all knew that they were going to draft a quarterback, and they just waited until somebody fell there. And sure enough, a guy that we tabbed as the most likely candidate to be there is Bo Nix, and Bo Nix fits the perfect profile for Sean Payton under his tutelage. So Bo Nix is now there. He's also there with Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson, from formerly of the Jets. All of these guys are fighting for this quarterback spot here. It's an interesting quarterback competition, to say the least, because you have a rookie who's just getting his feet wet, Jarrett Stidham, who's been kind of like that journeyman backup, and Zach Wilson, who's been a backup but also been a starter but has struggled. So all of them have varying backgrounds, and the favorite, as far as we know, Sean Payton obviously wants Bo Nix to win the job, but let's see how that all shakes out. And in doing so, that quarterback room, honestly, it's a little shaky because there's nothing concrete about it.
There.
They don't have a veteran presence that everybody knows that he's going to be able to come in and just maybe game manage. There's none of that. Zach Wilson is kind of like a roll of the dice type of quarterback. Maybe Sean Payton, out of anybody, could get a little bit more out of him and make him kind of more not as an aggressive type of quarterback, but kind of dial him back a little bit. Maybe that'll help him. Jarrett Stidham has shown flashes here and there, but has been always a career backup.
Right.
And then Bo Nix, a rookie. Like, so there's no like real surefire answer at that quarterback position.
Right. Yeah. And look at Bo Nix. Like, I wasn't high at him at all in the draft. I just didn't like a lot of stuff I saw on his college tape. But this, like you said, there's no real answer here. So do you start Bo Nix right away, or do you throw it out there and just start Zach Wilson? I think the happy thing here, especially the narrative for Zach Wilson, could be much like you saw like with Baker Mayfield last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, this guy gets a chance to start off with the season and then maybe hand it off to Bo Nix, but he shows enough to another team that maybe somebody might be interested in grabbing Zach Wilson somewhere. And then Jarrett Stidham has always been kind of that career backup. We've heard a lot of different people said how much they like Jarrett Stidham, but it's never enough to make him that starter. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, just kind of being there, making rosters. But like I said, the storyline here for me is, what are we going to see out of Zach Wilson, and is he going to produce? And that could be a major storyline during the season and potentially get him a starting gig somewhere else if they truly do believe in Bo Nix and are ready to make that change.
And that's already a storyline. Like, Zach Wilson's already being talked about of possibly winning the job already. Like, obviously he's
but
more
you've
of
always
the,
said also too, practice.
Yeah, but he's more of the veteran right now. So of course he's going to be in the lead as of right now. Bo Nix still needs to learn the playbook, still needs to develop chemistry with these wide receivers. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of these things where, like, when a rookie comes in, the job isn't given to them, but at the same time, it's almost pushed towards them because they're the answer that this coaching staff believes in. So for Bo Nix, as long as he can digest that playbook and get comfortable with it, I think that he will end up being the starter. But if there's any reservations in terms of, well, he's just not quite there yet, like even the Patriots right now have exuberted and said that Brissett. That Brissett is the starter right now.
Ready right now, yes.
Like, he's the most ready.
NFL ready.
It's funny how they use those words because NFL ready, sure, of course. But
you would think he's been here long enough. But if he's not ready yet, there's problems.
But they expect Drake to push him and possibly win it, just like with Denver, where they're hoping that Bo Nix will end up being that starter in the very end in week 1. And that takes care of the quarterback position, which is a complete mess. That's almost like the whole story of this team and storyline. But when you look at the rest of their offense, though, this is the part where I'm just like, okay, they waited, they got their quarterback, but what did they do with the rest of this team? You look at they've done a tremendous amount recently in the past couple of weeks where they were re-signing offensive linemen right now. Mm-hmm. To name off Quinn Maynards is one of the most high-profile guards in the NFL. They gave him just recently a boatload of money to lock him in for the long term. Mm-hmm. And then Ben Powers, who honestly I don't have a whole lot of confidence in going forward, but they gave him a big extension. They lost Lloyd Cushenberry in free agency, which I feel like was one of the biggest losses for Denver. And they have none other than Luke Wattenberg. Has anybody ever heard that name before? I know I haven't. So it's like, is this guy up and coming? Is this guy just a fill-in? Like they're just hoping that it sticks. So there's a couple of questionable positions on the offensive line where I'm just like, they didn't do anything different. They still have a couple of weaknesses there. And Garrett Bowles, who plays left tackle, he's been there. He's been their starter, but he's not an elite guy. He's not a great tackle. He's just kind of above average or average. And then on the other side, when they signed a year ago, they signed Mike McGlinchey from the Niners. They just gave him another huge extension to lock him up. So honestly, the right side, I'm perfectly okay with. They're pretty solid there. But then on the left side of that O-line, there's some question marks there to be had. And then you look at the receivers like we touched on before. Nothing real earth-shattering. Nothing. Not a true like Cortland Sutton is deemed like he's a veteran. He's older, longer in the tooth. He's going to be their number one guy. But they brought in guys like Josh Reynolds, who's kind of been that journeyman wide receiver, good veteran, not great. He can get the job done, but nothing explosive or flashy. Marvin Mims are really counting on this year. It's his second year as a wide receiver for them. They're hoping that he takes a big step and becomes more of that playmaker for them. Tim Patrick, who's kind of been in the starting lineup, does a great job, but is hurt every year. So, honestly, very shaky at the receiver position, a little shaky on offensive line. Quarterback, we still don't know, and obviously won't know until the end of training camp who's going to carry the torch there. And then running back is probably the most solid part of this offense, honestly. Javonte Williams had a good year last year, looks to return again this year. And then they added Samaj P. Ryan, which is going to add tremendous depth behind him. So offensively, Jim, I say it's up and down.
Yeah. It's going to weigh a lot onto Joe Lombardi here to get things going. Because again, you were that team there. You got the best year out of Russell Wilson that you could, and they couldn't get along, so he's gone. And then your other weapons, you let walk or see you later.
Yeah.
So you bring in guys that are okay. I mean, Cortland Sutton, absolutely your best guy right there. Tim Patrick, he's shown some really good spots there too on occasion. But like you said, you got your guys that have been here. Josh Reynolds has always been there. A decent wide receiver, but nothing that really blasts off the page here to where it says this team is going to make a move in this division, let alone make a playoff run. That's why I think it's preposterous that I even hear some of these analysts say it's sleeper team, the Broncos. Watch out for the Broncos. What the hell are you smoking? Are you going in a cave with Aaron Rodgers and doing the ayahuasca? What are you doing? What are you looking at? Because what I'm looking at doesn't add up to that. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's some growing pains. And like I said, we're going to start to see maybe people start looking at Sean Payton in a different light and say, hey, we got some questions here on how you're doing this. You look good with the Saints here now, but you haven't done squat with this team. And you wanted to go and talk about Nathaniel Hackett. Look what you did. You went in and then you kind of destroyed what was even there and left it in shambles, or they're kicking you out.
Yeah, and then when we look at the defensive side of the football, they made an addition with Alex Singleton coming over from the Eagles at outside linebacker, which I think is a smart move. I think it's a solid move. But again, when you look from head to toe on the defensive side, it's much of the same of last year. There's not really that much of changes. Maybe at safety with PJ Locke getting an extension, a young up and coming player who they really believe in, and and they got them slotted in at starter. But other than that, like you look at the rest of this team, it's a lot of guys that have played at different places. Now they're with Denver. Are they going to make Denver any better going forward? Like Pat Surtain, obviously he's one of the best corners in football, but after him, you got a mix and match type of secondary that like adding Brandon Jones from Miami. They're hoping that he can be a great asset next to PJ Locke. Levi Wallace coming over from Pittsburgh, who was formerly with the Bills, then went to Pittsburgh. Now he's with Denver. Like that doesn't spell success. Like you're not really sticking with anywhere year to year. So Cody Barton coming over from Washington, formerly of Seattle. Like there's guys that have different destinations on their name tag, but now they're ending up in Denver, hoping Denver can strike gold and kind of catapult off of these additions. But man, when you start to change a lot with your roster every year, and I understand they're trying to make the team better, but when you're making these constant changes, it seems like under Sean Payton, there's no continuity. There's no chemistry between the players that are on the roster. They all have to get to know everybody on a personal level and a playmaking level. They all have to like work off each other again and try to figure things out schematically and on the football field. And it doesn't spell success normally when you start changing things year to year to year. So like with Sean Payton making that huge decision, Jim, about sending Russell Wilson away because he was the problem on offense, even though he really wasn't the problem. Now you're stuck where you better hope one of these quarterbacks pan out, because if they don't, Sean Payton, you're risking your job now. Like you've made the decision, move on from him, a veteran, and now you're giving the keys to somebody, one of these younger guys. Hopefully it's the rookie and maybe he pans out. But man, the team overall to me is like there's too much turnover. There's a lot of changes, some of it positive, some of it negative, but I just don't see this team making the blockbuster change and going from worst to second or first.
You're relying on a lot again
in another year.
Yeah, because even I've seen Mims have some flashes that looks pretty good. I mean, they're hoping that he could do something with them, but again, that's a slap in the pan, a flash in the pan. But when your offense and your defense was rated as low as they were last year, you would figure out you can only get better, right? Hopefully,
you can only go up.
Yeah, you can only go up.
Exactly. Can only go up.
Like I said, the expectations are low.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.